Hi there, I'm Romy. I paid for my sister's $850 graduation party, only to be told by security that I didn't belong there. That moment, it wasn't just a slap in the face. It was the final crack in a wall they'd been building for years. Behind my back, they used my money, erased my name, and rewrote the truth to make me the outsider in my own family. But what hurt more than being left out was realizing I'd been used in silence, over and over again. And the worst part? That party was just the beginning. I told myself I wasn't expecting anything. I had no illusions. I wasn't hoping for hugs or smiles or even a seat at the table. I just wanted to see my sister walk across that stage, the one she'd been talking about for 4 years straight. The same sister whose rent and tuition I'd been covering while skipping dinners myself. But I still put on my best clean white blouse, jeans without holes, pulled my hair into something presentable. Maybe, just maybe, someone would look me in the eye today. The sun had already dipped lower by the time I pulled up to the estate in Bloomington. It was one of those big houses with manicured hedges and a fountain out front. Real, look how well we're doing energy. Cars lined both sides of the street. My dad's old pickup was crooked near the driveway. Kaylee's Jeep gleamed like it had been detailed that morning. I didn't see Grandma and Grandpa's Civic. That was strange. They never missed family milestones, not even awkward ones. I walked up with my phone in hand, the screenshot of the invite page open. I hadn't been sent anything directly, of course. Just saw the event mentioned in a comment thread on my mom's Facebook. That's how I hear about most things family-related, by accident. 2 security guards stood at the gate. One tall and thin, the other built like a fridge. Neither smiled. "This is a private celebration," the bigger one said. I kept my voice even. "I'm her sister." He raised an eyebrow. "Name?" "Romy." The other guard tapped his earpiece and stepped away, speaking low into his mic. I stood there, arms at my sides, hearing music and laughter floating from the backyard, glasses clinking. Someone shouted, "To the future!" and people cheered. Then the door opened. Out walked Kaylee. Glittery gold dress, phone in hand, like it was surgically attached. Behind her were my parents. My mom wore one of her pastel cardigans she saves for important days. My dad looked like he hadn't aged a day since the last time I saw him, which somehow made me angrier. Kaylee didn't even pause. She glanced at me, turned to the guards, and said it plain as day. "She doesn't belong here." I actually chuckled, thought it was sarcasm, until my dad said, "You really showed up?" He didn't sound surprised, more like amused, like I'd just walked into the wrong movie theater by mistake. "I didn't say a word," I replied. "I just walked away." My mom tried to jump in, voice all hushed and urgent like we were backstage at a funeral. "Romy, this is Kaylee's day. Let's not make it into something it's not." I looked her straight in the eye. "You mean like pretending I don't exist?" My dad laughed, actually laughed. "Come on, Romy. You know how things are. We just didn't think you'd want to come after the stuff you've been saying." "I haven't said anything," I said, calm but clear. Then Kaylee chimed in. "You only help to hold it over me. It's manipulative." I could have argued. I could have reminded them that I'd been transferring $750 every single month, right on the dot, and $3,200 each semester, without a single complaint. That I hadn't missed a payment in 3 years. But instead I said, "Then you're welcome." I turned and walked back to my car. There was no storming off, no tears. Just me, the crunch of gravel beneath my flats, and a kind of silence that felt more final than anything we'd ever screamed at each other growing up. I sat in the driver's seat for a minute. No music, no calls. I typed one line into my phone. "Starting next month, your rent's on you. Good luck." I hit send, started the engine, left the estate behind like a chapter I was done rereading. The road home was familiar, same turns, same intersections, but everything felt sharper. I noticed the cracks in the asphalt, the flickering streetlight near Central Ave. Even the gas station I usually ignored seemed to glow differently. By the time I got home, it was after 9. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and kicked off my shoes. Didn't bother turning on the lights. Just laid back on the couch, one arm flung over my eyes. Then my phone buzzed. Blocked caller. I let it ring. It buzzed again 5 minutes later. Same number. I ignored it. I should have turned it off completely, but something in me wanted to know who couldn't leave it alone. The third time it rang, I stared at the screen. Didn't answer. The night outside was still. Not silent, but still. I could hear the faint hum of someone's TV next door. A car door in the distance. I closed my eyes and saw Kaylee's face. The way she looked past me like I was some delivery person who wandered into the photo booth. The kind of indifference that doesn't happen by accident. They didn't forget me. They chose to erase me. And maybe this time, I was finally choosing not to disappear quietly. Sleep never really came. I drifted in and out, the kind of restless haze that leaves you more tired than before. At some point near dawn, I finally got up, reheated day-old coffee, and stood by the window watching the streetlights blink out one by one. The city always looks more honest in the morning. Less makeup, more cracks. I checked my phone again. Nothing new from Kaylee. Not even a fake apology. That silence took me back to January. My birthday had landed on a Tuesday that year, buried under a blizzard that shut half the city down. I didn't expect a party. I didn't even expect cake. But I figured maybe I'd get a call, or one of those dry, emoji-laced texts my mom sends when she's trying to seem warm. Instead, I got a Facebook notification. Kaylee had gone out that night. Champagne flutes, sparklers on a dessert plate, group photos in a downtown bar. She'd tagged everyone, friends, coworkers, even someone named Ty I'd never heard of. She posted it with the caption, "Surprise night out, grateful for the ones who matter." That was the same night I had leftover carrot cake from a nurse I barely talked to. She'd stuck a single candle in it and said, "Don't tell HR we lit something in the break room." I'd laughed, because what else do you do? The next day my mom texted, "Hope you're doing okay." That was it. No happy birthday. No explanation. Just a vague check-in, like she was trying to cover her bases without committing to the facts. I didn't reply. 2 weeks later, I checked my bank account. Not out of paranoia. Habit. Years of tight budgeting made it second nature. There was a new tab labeled Shared Access. Judith's name sat there in bold. She could see every transaction, every bag of frozen peas, every overdue Netflix charge. And it clicked. Months ago, Kaylee had asked me to start sending rent to Mom's account because it's easier for her to track. I hadn't questioned it. Of course I hadn't. That's what they count on. But Judith hadn't said a word since. Not a thank you, not a check-in, just silence, while my bank became her private microscope. I stared at that screen for longer than I should have. I wasn't angry, not yet, just hollow. That started to change 2 weeks before the graduation party. Kaylee had texted me out of nowhere. No greeting, no, how have you been? Just, I need a dress, graduation is coming. Budget? I told her $200. That was already more than I could afford, but I figured if she kept it reasonable, I'd manage. She replied with a screenshot. A dress. Not just any dress. A sleeveless, floor-length gold designer piece with a retail tag of $698 plus tax. She wrote under it, "This one. You wouldn't get it, but this level of attention demands something polished." I stared at those words for so long I missed my bus to work. I still bought the dress. I didn't argue. I didn't negotiate. I just transferred the amount and told her to confirm the delivery address. She sent a thumbs up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling again, the same crack in the corner, shaped like a crooked Y. I pulled up Kaylee's Instagram. The dress had already made its debut. Full-length mirror selfie, captioned, "Deserve every bit of this moment." #grateful life comments rolled in. "You're glowing." "Queen vibes." "So proud of you." She liked every single one. My name, not mentioned. I checked the messages again. Nothing, not even a thanks. I closed the app. My phone screen reflected my face, pale and tired under the low kitchen light. They always said I was the serious one, the stable one, the one who keeps things together. I used to think that was praise. Now it just sounded like a warning. Don't expect much. Be useful, not visible. The silence had weight, the kind that stretches back years and presses into your chest when you least expect it. I stood there for a while, holding the edge of the counter, grounding myself, trying not to let it pull me under again. Some people burn bridges. Others just pretend the river never existed. And me? I was starting to realize I'd built the bridge alone. A few days passed, but the heaviness stayed. I moved through my routines like a ghost. Work, laundry, dishes, bills, each task as dull and repetitive as the next. I wasn't numb, not exactly. Just waiting, like I was circling a bruise that hadn't fully formed yet. It was a Thursday night around 9 when the message came through. I'd just pulled the last load of towels from the dryer, and the buzz of my phone startled me more than it should have. I wiped my hands on my sweatpants and glanced at the screen. Marlene. We hadn't spoken directly in almost a year. She was my cousin, younger by a few years, quiet at family gatherings, always smiling politely, but never saying much. I liked her, but we weren't close. Her text read, "Hey, can I send you something privately? I think you need to see this." I stood there for a moment, staring at the screen, then typed back, "Sure." Less than a minute later, 3 images came through. Screenshots. I tapped the first, a group chat. Username, Kaylee plus real ones. I scrolled slowly. The first message was from Kaylee. Told y'all he'd show up. So desperate to be part of everything. Then another. He pays my bills and still gets treated like trash. Must love it. And another from someone else. Did he cry? Please tell me he cried. Kaylee's reply. Didn't stay long enough to find out. Too bad, I would have filmed it. I stopped breathing for a second. These weren't just careless words. They were sharpened, chosen, meant to cut. The second screenshot had even more. One of the girls in the chat, someone I didn't recognize, wrote, "Wait, you really didn't invite him? After he paid all that?" Kaylee responded, "Why should I? Paying doesn't mean you're part of the family. It means you're useful. That's it." I dropped onto the couch like my knees gave out. The screen was still glowing in my hand. I opened the third image, a meme, my face pulled from an old Facebook photo, edited with the words, "ATM machine, but make it sad." I sat there in the dark for a long while, the only sound in the room the soft hum of my space heater. Then the phone buzzed again. Another message from Marlene. I didn't know how to bring it up. I was added to that group by accident last year. I never left. Just kept watching. She never noticed I was still in it. Another beat. I'm not sending this to be mean. I just think people deserve to know who they're defending. I didn't respond right away. I didn't cry either. I thought I might. But there was no panic, no spiral. Just this overwhelming clarity, like stepping into cold air after being in a stuffy room too long. I typed back, "Thank you, seriously." She replied with a single heart. After that, I opened the family group chat, the one where they posted baby photos and links to fundraisers and bad jokes from Uncle Harold. The one where nobody had said a word to me since I left the party. I stared at the blinking cursor for a full minute. Then I typed, "Let me show you what your perfect daughter really thinks of me." I attached the screenshot of Kaylee's messages. No commentary, no explanation, just facts. Then I hit send. The chat went silent. 10 full minutes passed. I watched the timestamp updates. Who saw it, who hadn't yet. Then a single action. Aunt Martha left the group. No text, no goodbye, just gone. That was all it took for me to understand how thin that family unity had always been. One exposed truth, and the seams started to split. I sat back on the couch, my fingers still buzzing from the adrenaline. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt awake. It wasn't about being forgotten anymore. It was about being used, lied to, mocked for the very sacrifices I made in silence. The weight I'd carried for so long, it had a name now. And it wasn't mine to hold anymore. The group chat remained dead silent all the next day. Not a single reaction. No one tried to defend her. No one asked for context. They all just vanished. I didn't know if they were processing or pretending it didn't happen. But either way, I let it sit. I'd said my piece. Truth didn't need a follow-up. I was halfway through microwaving leftover curry when my phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't a cousin or a blocked number. It was Judith. I didn't answer right away. I let it ring out. She called again a few minutes later. I figured if I didn't pick up now, I'd just be dodging this for days. So I tapped accept and waited. "Rami," she started, her voice coated in that syrupy softness she used when she was trying to sound concerned, but still above it all. "I really wish you hadn't posted that. You've upset your sister deeply. I didn't answer at first. Just let the weight of that sentence hang in the air. Then I said, You mean the sister who humiliated me in front of security after I paid for her party? She was emotional, my mother replied. It was a big day. For her? Sure. For me, it was the day I learned you'd rather pretend I didn't exist than risk 1 minute of discomfort. Judith sighed like she was the one exhausted by all this. Romy, we were trying to keep things peaceful. There was no need for all this drama. Peaceful for who exactly? Look, I don't know why you're bringing up every little thing. Your sister is younger, she's figuring things out. You should be the bigger person. I almost laughed. The bigger person. How many times had that been my role? The quiet one, the helper, the stable one, the ATM, never the person anyone defended. Let me ask you something, I said calmly. When did you last wish me a happy birthday? She paused. That hesitation said more than any apology would have. That's not fair, she said finally. You never said anything either. Because I was tired of keeping score, Mom. Then why start now? She asked, a little more sharply. Because now I know it wasn't forgetfulness. It was a choice. I hung up before she could reply. I wasn't going to spend another minute letting her twist this. A few hours later, as I was cleaning up the living room, I heard a knock. Not rushed, not angry, just steady. When I opened the door, Grandpa Harold was standing there, holding a small pink bakery box, and a look that told me he knew more than he was letting on. Got your favorites, he said, lifting the box slightly. Lemon poppy seed. He stepped in and sat down like it was the most natural thing in the world. We weren't invited, he said quietly, before I could ask. Your grandmother and I. We didn't know about the party until after. Judith said we'd cause a scene. Apparently, we complained too much. Complain about what? I asked, even though I already knew. Music, food, grandpa stories? You know, being alive? I shook my head, the sting behind my eyes sharp. She said Grandpa always talks too much and takes attention away from Kaylee. He didn't react, just opened the bakery box and pulled out a muffin. Well, I do talk a lot, he said, shrugging, but I talk about things that matter, things your parents don't want heard. We sat for a while. No TV, no distractions, just him, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, and me, trying not to let the grief leak out. Before he left, he looked at me with the kind of clarity that only comes from age and being done with sugarcoating. You're not crazy, he said. They've made you feel like you are, like wanting to be seen is selfish, but it's not. He squeezed my shoulder. Just don't lose yourself trying to keep people like them comfortable. When he left, I made another pot of coffee, not because I needed caffeine. I just needed something warm to hold on to. I stood at the sink, watching the steam rise. My phone sat on the counter, face down. For once, I didn't care what was lighting up or buzzing. Let them spiral. Let them rewrite history in the group chat. I wasn't playing along anymore. They didn't want me. They wanted the convenience of me. And for the first time in my adult life, I was done handing that out for free. The coffee grew cold on the counter, untouched. I didn't bother reheating it. Instead, I grabbed my coat and keys, sent a one-line text, "Let's talk, neutral ground," and drove into downtown Minneapolis. I chose a cafe halfway between our neighborhoods, somewhere anonymous, somewhere I wouldn't mind never returning to. Kaylee showed up 10 minutes late, dressed in her best impression of casual elegance, expensive loungewear, a flawless blowout, and sunglasses she didn't bother taking off indoors. Really? I said, gesturing to the glasses. She slipped them down her nose and smirked. Migraine, she said, like it was a punchline only she got. We sat across from each other, the silence dragging until I spoke. I'm not here to scream. I'm not here to fix anything either. She crossed her legs, glanced at her phone. Then what? I'm here to warn you, I said. If you twist one more thing about me, if I catch you rewriting reality again, I won't stay quiet. Kaylee rolled her eyes. God, you're so dramatic. This isn't court. No, I said, but lies still have consequences. She leaned back, arms crossed. You've always had this persecution complex. I make a few posts, and suddenly I'm manipulating the narrative. Give me a break. You deleted my name, I said flatly. Everywhere, Even the thank you comment you wrote me a week before the party. Gone. She blinked once. It didn't fit the vibe. There it was, the truth casual as a shrug. And putting thanks to my mom's sacrifices on your school bio? That's not just forgetting, that's theft. She waved me off. Mom did help. She made sure the checks cleared. She made sure I paid her directly. I snapped. That's what she made sure of. Kaylee raised her hands like I was the one overreacting. Look, if it means that much to you, I'll add your name to something. But this storm you're kicking up, it's not a good look. I stood up. Neither is being a liar. She didn't follow me when I left. Didn't call out or text later. And I didn't expect her to. That evening, back in my apartment, I opened her public graduation page. School blog, student spotlight, an entire section of acknowledgments. There it was in bold. I owe everything to my mother. She sacrificed so much to help me get here. I stared at the screen long enough to memorize the curve of the font. There was no mention of the woman who gave up her own vacation fund, skipped dinners, said no to new shoes for 3 years just to keep her afloat. And then I checked Judith's Facebook, a brand new photo album, my graduate. Every picture of the party was curated to look like a Hallmark ad. Judith front and center, smiling beside Kaylee in that $700 gown. The captions were what hit hardest. She did it all herself, but I'm proud to have been her support system. Comments poured in. You're such a strong mom, Judith. So selfless of you to raise such a driven young woman. Not one single tag. Not one acknowledgement. I scrolled and scrolled until my fingers hurt, but I didn't see my name anywhere. I closed the browser, shut the laptop, let the weight of it settle. It wasn't just the erasure, it was the repackaging, the way my silence had been used as space for their lies to grow. But I didn't scream. I didn't comment. Not yet, because silence, it cuts both ways. And I was done letting mine shield people who weaponized it. I was going to show the truth, but not in a status update. Not in another argument over coffee. The next time, I'd let the world see who they really were, and I'd do it in a way they couldn't delete or recaption. The sky outside was still the color of wet concrete when I sat down at my kitchen table, half awake, coffee barely touched. I wasn't expecting anything unusual. It was a Thursday, I think. Or maybe a Tuesday. They'd all started to blur. I opened my laptop and glanced at my inbox, and that's when I saw it. A forwarded email from Ellie, a friend in HR at a company I'd contracted for in the past. We weren't close, not really, but we had a quiet sort of understanding. She knew what I'd been through, at least some of it, and she clearly thought I deserved a heads up. The subject line was simple, chilling. Concern regarding employee behavior. I felt it before I even read the body of the message. That creeping sensation, like a drop in temperature. To whom it may concern. I'm reaching out because I'm concerned about Romy D's recent behavior. She's been emotionally erratic, has posted about family members online, and is exhibiting patterns of harassment. I fear for our safety, and I believe this should be on record should things escalate. Kaylee D. I read it again, slower, letting each word sink in like a stone dropped into water. Emotionally erratic, harassment, a threat. My name was in there, not veiled, not hinted at, written outright like a stain. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't someone blowing off steam in a private message. This was deliberate, a paper trail, an accusation dressed up in concern. My sister, my own sister, had sent this to my former workplace, to people who still trusted me, people who could have been future employers. She knew exactly what she was doing. I closed the laptop, sat back. Let the heat rise, not the explosive kind, not the kind that makes you scream or break something. This was colder, controlled, sharp around the edges. No, I wasn't going to cry. Not for her, not again. Instead, I reached for my phone, opened the folder I'd created months ago. Screenshots, transfers, texts, evidence. It started with money, tuition deposits, rent help, the time I paid for Kaylee's car insurance when Judith forgot. There were thank you messages, emoji-filled texts about how much she owed me. There was a whole life's worth of quiet support buried in those screenshots. I had receipts. The digital kind. The real kind. If Kaylee wanted a record, I'd give her one. But it wasn't going to HR, and it sure as hell wasn't staying private. I opened Reddit, logged into my throwaway. I'd been on our family drama for years, silently scrolling through stories that hit a little too close. Stories that made me feel less alone. I knew how this worked. I knew what would land. I began typing. My sister tried to have me kicked out of the graduation party I paid for. Then she wrote to my job saying I was unstable. Here's what really happened. I laid it all out. No exaggeration, no name-calling, just the facts, the payment confirmations, the texts thanking me, the Venmo history, the emails, the screenshots of her public posts calling Judith a supermom, conveniently leaving out the person who'd fronted the costs when our dad dropped the ball. I wrote like I was filing a report. Calm, clear, chronological, and then I ended it with a single line. Silence protects abusers. I'm done being quiet. I hit post. Then I waited. The response didn't trickle in. It came like a wave. 1,000 upvotes in the first hour. Comments piling up, hundreds of them. By lunchtime, it was on the front page of the subreddit. By evening, people were messaging me privately. Strangers, kind strangers. Some angry, some heartbroken. All saying the same thing. You're not crazy. This happened to me too. This is emotional abuse. You're brave for speaking out. I didn't answer them all, just read, took a breath, sat with it. And then my phone rang. Kaylee. I let it go dark, then it buzzed again. A text from Judith. Take it down, now. You're hurting the family. I stared at it for a while. Not out of shock, but recognition. This was her pattern. When things got uncomfortable, when the illusion cracked, she'd pull rank. The family. As if that meant something when it was convenient. As if I hadn't been cut out of the picture for years. I typed back. You erased me for years. This is me reclaiming space. No reply. For the first time, I didn't care. Because this wasn't just about one graduation party or one email to HR. It was about years of being edited out, scrubbed clean from our family's narrative, the steady denial of my role, my support, my existence. I'd been the strong one, the quiet one, the one who didn't need anything. Turns out people don't see what they're determined to erase. But now, the story was out there. And this time, it wasn't being told by someone else. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't rage. It was something deeper. Truth. And it hit harder than I ever could. It never happens all at once. People don't just flip like a light switch. They drift. They recalibrate. They start pulling back in quiet ways. Less eye contact, shorter replies. The subtle delay when they're deciding whether to stand beside you or stay silent. You feel the shift long before anyone says anything. It's the slow unraveling that hurts the most. That's how I learned who had been quietly watching all along, who had their doubts but said nothing, who had already left me behind and just hadn't said it out loud yet. So when the knock came that morning, I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not them. It was raining, a steady gray curtain of drizzle that turned the street into a soft blur. And on my porch, without a text or a warning, stood Marlene and Adrian. Adrian held a small envelope, the edges curling with damp. He looked like he hadn't slept, hair a little messy, shirt half tucked like he'd left in a hurry. His voice cracked a little when he spoke. I owe you more than this, he said, but I had to start somewhere. He handed me the envelope. Inside, $60 in cash and a folded note in his careful, neat handwriting. One lunch for each month. I acted like you didn't matter. I didn't move for a second. Not because of the money, it wasn't about that, but because it was the first time someone from that side of the family had actually looked me in the eye and said, I failed you. Behind him, Marlene stood clutching her tote bag, curls damp against her forehead. I used to think you were just intense, she said, shrugging like the words tasted strange. Too emotional, too much. But now I know, you weren't crazy, you were just outnumbered. We didn't say much else, just sat in the front room for a while. No small talk, no forced apologies, just the kind of quiet that fills in the cracks when someone's trying, really trying, to make it right. And honestly, that was enough, for now. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Another name I hadn't expected. Grandpa Harold. Can we talk? I'm nearby. We met at a diner neither of us liked, the kind that smelled like burnt coffee and old vinyl, with cracked red booths and menus that hadn't changed since 1994. But it was quiet. Neutral ground. That's all I needed. He leaned in across the table, both hands wrapped around his mug like he was anchoring himself. You know, he said, I was at the house last week. Nobody saw me come in. Judith and Walter were in the kitchen. I heard them talking about Kaylee, about how they spun the whole thing. He took a sip, eyes never leaving mine. They laughed, Romy, like it was funny, like what they did to you was just strategy. I didn't say a word. I just stared down at the cracked formica between us. Something about the pattern reminded me of veins under skin, fractured and fragile. They think people forget, he said, but I didn't, and now neither will anyone else. I nodded slowly. You used to say silence was power, I said. He nodded back. It is, until it starts protecting the wrong side. That night, another message. Instagram this time. A name I hadn't seen in years. Jamie, high school classmate, now married to one of Kaylee's friends. We hadn't spoken in forever. Hey, this might be weird, but I think you need to hear this. Attached, a voice memo, 5 minutes long. I hesitated, then hit play. There was laughter at first, someone chewing gum, casual chaos. Then Kaylee's voice, sharp and clear. She's basically my personal ATM. She'll cave, she always does. A pause. Then a quiet voice on the call whispered, That's cold. Kaylee again. Please, guilt is cheaper than gratitude. My stomach didn't even drop. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't shock you when you already know it. It just confirms what you hoped you were wrong about. Jamie's follow-up text came a second later. I was added by accident. Stayed to see how far it'd go. I saved that before they kicked me out. I stared at the screen. No anger, just clarity. Then I sent the file to the same subreddit as before. No need for explanation. I titled it, Turns out I wasn't crazy, just surrounded by people who profited from the lie. It blew up faster than the last one. Thousands of comments, thousands of upvotes. This family's a masterclass in manipulation. Guilt is cheaper than gratitude? That line belongs in a psych textbook. I hope she never gives them another second of peace. Then came the ripple effect. Distant cousins messaged. One of them, Aunt Martha, quietly left the family group chat for the second time in 6 months. Adrian posted a public comment under the Reddit thread. Romy isn't bitter, she's brave, there's a difference. And Kaylee? Nothing. Her Instagram went silent. Stories vanished, comments locked, profile blank. But I knew she was still watching. People like her don't walk away. They monitor, they wait, they look for new angles. But the control she used to have, it was slipping through her fingers, one truth at a time. For the first time, this story wasn't just mine to carry alone. It had weight now. Echo. A paper trail of belief and receipts and witnesses. The carefully crafted image of our perfect little family wasn't untouchable anymore. The glass was cracking, and Kaylee knew exactly who threw the first stone. The mail slot rattled once and fell silent. I didn't expect anything, especially not that day. It was early, just after 8. The sun barely lit the kitchen. I was still barefoot, coffee half brewed. But there it was on the floor, an envelope. Brown, thick, no return address. I didn't recognize the handwriting on the front, but the second I peeled it open, I knew exactly what it was. The will, a scanned copy, highlighted, annotated, with one glaring omission, me. Everything, every asset, every heirloom, every dollar went to Kaylee. Not even a mention of my name. No in the event of pod clause. No beloved daughter Romy. Nothing. I sat at the kitchen table staring at it for what felt like hours. The steam from my coffee had long faded. I wasn't surprised, but the brutality of it still knocked the air out of me. I forwarded the document to Grandpa Harold. It took him less than 10 minutes to call back. That's recent, he said. That isn't the will we saw 2 years ago. Then another call came through. Eleanor. She hadn't reached out in ages, not since before Mom and Dad's anniversary mess. Judith didn't tell anyone, she whispered. She said you were too dramatic to deserve anything real. I laughed. bitter and full. Dramatic? Or just no longer silent? Eleanor didn't answer, but her pause said enough. 2 days later, I was at Judith's house. No warning, no invitation, just walked in with the envelope in hand. Kaylee was curled on the couch in matching loungewear. Walter sat at the dining table flipping through a newspaper like he was auditioning for Passive Patriarch of the Year. I dropped the document on the table between them. No theatrics. Let's stop spinning. One conversation, one moment of honesty. That's all I want. Judith stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, looking like she was about to deliver a speech. She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her get to the second syllable. If your love was conditional, say that. If your version of family requires silence and service, just admit it. Don't dress it up like care. Walter finally looked up. That's not fair. I locked eyes with him. What's not fair is rewriting history and calling it healing. No one replied. I turned toward Kaylee. She met my gaze for half a second before reaching for her phone. Don't, I warned. If you're going to record this to make me look unhinged again, at least wait until I leave. She dropped the phone. I stepped back, taking in the house. The same furniture, the same photos on the mantle, the same curated image. This place isn't mine. It never was. I just funded the illusion. Judith tried again. You don't understand. I cut her off one last time. I do. I understand more than you ever gave me credit for. I left the house without another word. By the time I got home, I had already uploaded the will to the same Reddit thread. The caption was simple. Let's stop pretending this was ever about family. It was about ownership. Within hours, the comments were on fire. This is next-level manipulation. She gave them everything and got erased for it. Where do I send Romy flowers? That night, Kaylee deleted her Instagram. Judith's Facebook suddenly went private. Eleanor sent me a text. I didn't know. I really didn't. I believed her. Partially. But I wasn't in the business of making people feel better anymore. Not if it came at the cost of my own peace. Harold called that evening just to say, proud of you. I didn't cry. I just looked out the window, breathed in, and let the silence settle. Not heavy this time, but earned. The kind of quiet you get after telling your truth and watching it land. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was holding up a family. I was finally holding up myself. The sun rose a little differently that morning. Or maybe I just noticed it for the first time in a while. I drove through the city without the usual tension in my chest. No tight grip on the steering wheel, no mental rehearsals of conversations that would never go the way I hoped. 3 weeks had passed since everything cracked open, since I stopped trying to tape it all back together. Since I chose myself, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I parked outside the nonprofit office, a shared space with creaky floors and peeling paint. But it had windows that let the light in, and for the first time in years, I did too. Inside, my desk sat bare, no framed photos, no plants, just a clean surface waiting to be filled. I slid my laptop out of its sleeve and opened the calendar. The day was full, grant follow-ups, outreach emails, a Zoom call with a youth shelter director. And I was excited, not anxious, not dreading, just grounded. I had a title now, Director of Outreach, not assistant to anyone, not someone's second choice, no strings attached. The salary was modest, the schedule was flexible, the purpose, mine. I didn't hear from Kaylee anymore. Her profile was still private, no new content. Her silence was loud in its own way, but it no longer echoed inside me. My phone buzzed around lunchtime. Grandpa Harold, like clockwork. You eat yet? He asked. Not yet, about to. You working too hard? No harder than I want to. He laughed. That's new. We kept it short. We always did. But it was enough. Just knowing someone was still in my corner with no agenda attached. An hour later, Eleanor dropped by the office with a small container of muffins. No grand gestures, no explanations, just thought you might be too busy to grab something. I thanked her. She smiled, but I could see it. Her eyes had changed. Softer, more present. Maybe she'd seen enough now to stop pretending she never saw before. The thing is, no one ever said, I'm sorry. Not Judith, not Walter, not Kaylee, and I didn't expect them to. I no longer needed their words to validate my story. Their absence spoke louder anyway. Later that week, I got an email from a small liberal arts college downtown. They were hosting a panel on resilience and requested me as a speaker. "We've followed your posts," the message said. "Would you consider sharing your story? There are students who feel invisible within their own families." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying, "Yes, I'd be honored." It wasn't about reliving the pain. It was about telling the truth where it mattered, giving language to people who still didn't know how to say, "That wasn't okay." On Friday, I stopped by the neighborhood cafe. My usual table by the window was open. I sat with my laptop, a muffin, and a second coffee for no one in particular. Just habit or hope. I scrolled past Kaylee's profile one more time, locked down tight. A few comments from strangers still lingered beneath old photos. Most were gone. I didn't type anything, didn't screenshot, didn't share. I just sat back and exhaled. It wasn't revenge I wanted, it was release. Some wounds don't get stitched up with apologies. Some heal in silence over time when you finally stop handing the scalpel to the people who cut you. That evening, as I walked back to my car, I passed by a glass window and caught my reflection. Not tired, not bitter, just whole. The kind of whole that doesn't beg to be believed. The kind that no longer needs proof. Harold called that night. We didn't talk about the family. We talked about tomatoes, his garden, the dog next door that kept digging holes under his fence. I laughed more than I thought I could. Before bed, I opened my journal. Not to write pain, just to write. Ideas for the panel. Names of women I wanted to invite. A quote I'd heard once and never forgotten. "You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." I underlined it twice. Then I closed the book, turned off the light, and slept with the window open. Because for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid of what the morning might bring. You know, I used to think that keeping the peace meant keeping quiet. That loyalty was measured by how much pain you could swallow without flinching. That being the strong one meant disappearing behind everyone else's story. But here's what I've learned. Silence doesn't make you noble. It makes you invisible, and no one deserves to feel erased inside their own family. Speaking up isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your name, your truth, and your place in the world. It's about saying, "I was here, I mattered, and I won't let your version of me be the only one that exists." To anyone watching this who's ever felt dismissed, diminished, or written out, you are not alone. And you don't need a permission slip to matter. You don't have to scream to be powerful. Sometimes the quietest decisions, walking away, standing firm, choosing peace, make the loudest echoes. So let me ask you, have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself? Or maybe you've watched someone else be mistreated and stayed quiet. Would you do it differently now? Leave a comment and tell me where you're from, or drop a 1 if this story struck a chord with you. And hey, if this video spoke to your heart, if it made you feel seen, or reminded you that you're not crazy for wanting more, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we tell truths, and sometimes that's how healing begins.